We can just spend a minute sort of trying to delve into the notion of common knowledge. How's that different from shared beliefs or uh, data that is widely accepted?
So there is a qualitative difference between them, and it's perhaps best captured by the story with which I begin the book, and that is the story of the emperor's new clothes. So when the little boy said the emperor was naked, he wasn't telling anyone anything they didn't already know. They knew the emperor was naked. They could see the emperor was naked. So there was universal private knowledge. Everyone knew. But when the boy blurted it out within earshot of everyone, then at that moment, the state of their knowledge changed, because now they knew that everyone else knew that they knew, and that everyone else knew that everyone else knew. And the psychological consequence was it changed their social relationship with the the emperor, from obsequious deference to ridicule and scorn. And so the story for me captures three important facts about common knowledge. One of them is it is not the same thing as universal private knowledge. There's a difference between everyone knowing something and everyone knowing that everyone knows it. The second is that, and this addresses an immediate objection or reservation to the very idea, how could people ever know that someone else knows that they know that the other one knows ad infinitum? It's hard enough to keep track of 2 or 3 I know that he knows, let alone an infinite number, which couldn't fit into a finite head. And the answer is that common knowledge can be granted in a stroke when an event is public or conspicuous or self-evident. That is, if you're in a circumstance in which you can see or hear something, while you can see other people seeing it and they can see you seeing it, that carries in it the potential of an infinite number of levels of I know that he knows, without you having to having it either explained to you or without you having to explicitly think that thought. That is, and we experience common knowledge in everyday life in the sense that something is public or out there or in your face or you can't miss it. That's what common knowledge feels like when you have it, at least when you have it implicitly. And the third is that it does change social relationships that are more generally. The reason that common knowledge has been of such interest in philosophy, game theory, economics, and other fields is that it's necessary for coordination, for 2 or more people to be on the same page, for them to make complementary choices that benefit them both only if each one makes the same choice. The very concrete example is the decision to drive on the left or drive on the right. There's no reason to drive on the left or to drive on the right, other than that everyone else is driving on that side, which is reason enough. But you can only have a convention like driving on the left or driving on the right if everyone knows that everyone knows it. If you're the only one who knows that the law is to drive on the right and everyone else thinks that you should drive on the left, then you better not act on your private knowledge. And so the extension that makes it applicable to the emperor's new clothes, and one of the major, what I think is one of the original ideas in the book, is that our informal social relationships, like driving on the left or driving on the right, are held in place by common knowledge. What does it mean for 2 people to be friends? It's not as if they sign a contract. It's each one knows that the other one knows that they know that they're friends, and that's what friendship is. Likewise, that's what deference to authority is. A dominant person stands their ground because they know that the subordinate person will give way, and the subordinate person gives way because they know that the dominant person will stand their ground, and so on ad infinitum. So all of our informal social relationships, our friendships, our romances, our hierarchies, our transactional relationships, I suggest are held in place by common knowledge and can be threatened by contrary common knowledge. Sometimes a company marketing a product can't just market the product if the product is not consumed in individually, in private, by a single person, but has to be sold to many people all at the same time for any of them to want to buy it. So this can happen when there are so-called network externalities, that is, when the value of something depends on how many other people use it. And the paradigm case, and the one that Chue explores, was the introduction of the Macintosh computer in 1984, where Apple was faced with a problem. They had, Steve Jobs had the insight that a kind of computer that was used among the techiest of the techies at Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, an exotic new computer, in the days in which personal computers had 24 lines of 80 characters, and users had to memorize commands and type them in with the right syntax, the right punctuation, and remember the names of all their files. And so, meanwhile, the nerds were using this radical new computer that had windows and icons and menus and this thing called a mouse. So Jobs commercialized it. The first version flopped. So he tried again with a more affordable version, but here's the problem. No matter how insanely great this new invention, the Macintosh, was, no one would buy it if they were the only ones, because they couldn't count on there being apps written for it. They couldn't count on there being peripherals available. They couldn't count on there being helplines and technical assistance if it was still an exotic computer that only they bought. So Apple had to sell not the computer, but it had to sell widespread adoption of simultaneous adoption of the computer. And the way they broke this knot was they had to make it common knowledge that this was an insanely great new gadget. And so they used the Super Bowl, a common knowledge generator, because the Super Bowl in the United States, and Canada too, there's a lot of hoopla. There's anticipation leading up to it. There's numerous postmortems of not only the game, but the ads. And so when you see a Super Bowl ad, you know that a lot of other people are seeing the ad, and that they know that a lot of other people are seeing the ad. And so Apple hired the hottest Hollywood director at the time, Ridley Scott, the man behind Alien and Blade Runner, who designed an ad that ran only once. It's the most expensive ad in the history of television. And the ad said nothing about the product. It didn't say anything about the windows, the menus. It capitalized on the fact that 1984, of course, was the title of George Orwell's dystopian novel. And it started with a rather dystopian 1984-like scene of a grim corporate auditorium where the employees were all dressed in gray sackcloth. And into the auditorium bursts a young, lithe woman with red shorts and a singlet, wielding a mallet, which she then hurls at the screen, which explodes in a fireball. And then the crawl says, on January 23rd, Apple will introduce the Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. That was the ad. So why would they not mention this amazing new gadget in the ad? Because their main impediment was getting enough people to realize that enough other people might be interested in it. The main hook to current events that I explore in this book is the phenomenon of cancel culture. And there is a chapter in the book called The Canceling Instinct, and a discussion of social media shaming mobs, which raises the question, why is there an urge to censor people, to punish them for their speech, to deplatform them? Notice, by the way, once again, a platform is a medium from which someone, is a position from which someone can generate common knowledge. They're on the platform, everyone can see them while seeing one another. And I suggest that the canceling instinct is well captured by the metaphor of deplatforming. Namely, it's an urge to prevent something from becoming common knowledge, and in particular, an idea that is felt to threaten some moral norm. And that our norms against, say, that you pick up after your dog, you don't tell ethnic jokes, you don't comment on someone's appearance, all these things that make social life possible, exist as common knowledge. That is, you don't do them because, everyone knows you don't do them. And when someone seems to breach a norm, it calls forth the urge to prevent the norm from unraveling. If the breach is public, that is, it's in danger of becoming common knowledge, they have to be punished in the arena of common knowledge. So in the same way that there used to be public hangings and pillories and stocks where someone was humiliated or harmed in a public place, to make it common knowledge that you can't break this law or break this norm, the social media pylons are ways of propping up a norm that seems to be threatened. In the academic context, the paradox is that this is academics ought to be in the business of testing out hypotheses, sharing ideas. Social politeness should take a back seat to ascertaining the truth, which often can feel uncomfortable. Nonetheless, academics, being human, often succumb to the urge to deplatform, to prop up what they feel is a moral norm. And I'll go over just by a couple of seconds to give one more anecdote that captures the idea. And this is a story that biologists love to tell. I fact-checked it. Turns out it's apocryphal. It never happened, but it's still a good story. So according to the story, a proper Victorian lady, in some tellings she was the wife of a vicar, learns about Darwin, and she exclaims, "Descended from apes, my dear, let us hope it is not true, but if it is, let us hope it not become widely known." She could have said commonly known, and that captures the idea that dangerous ideas, those felt to threaten a moral order, if they are public, they are felt to be particularly dangerous, public meaning common knowledge, and hence the urge to censor, to cancel, to deplatform.